Hey guys, it's me, Jimmy Champagne, here with my review of Jigsaw, which just released in theaters tonight. So if you didn't know, this one picks up the Saw franchise after we haven't had one for over 7 years, which is crazy. This one picks up 10 years after the last movie, and a bunch of murderers start happening out of nowhere, and people think it might be John Kramer, the Jigsaw killer. But if you've seen the other movies, which you definitely should before checking this one out, you know that's weird because John Kramer's dead. Like every other Saw movie, there's a lot of characters you have to keep track of all at once, but the big ones you gotta pay attention to this time are Matt Passmore's Logan and Callum Keith Rennie's Halloran, and of course Tobin Bell's Jigsaw, or John Kramer. They're all kind of the key players in this movie, and they are all pretty good for the most part. So I gotta start this out by saying I'm not the biggest Saw fan. I really never saw them in theaters because I was a little too young when they came out, and then I just kind of missed the train on that one, but it was kind of cool to see something coming out every year on Halloween that people could collectively go to the theater and talk about. My experience with that was Paranormal Activity, but I know this movie does resonate with a lot of people. So after checking them all out last week, I gotta say Jigsaw is probably my favorite one in the series because it takes a lot of the mistakes of the older films and fixes them, which is good. So the first big thing I really liked is this movie's look. It doesn't look cheap like the other ones did. The cinematography here is on point. I also really like that a vast majority of the movie takes place outside, and a lot of the traps take place on a pig farm, which is a great setting. It's not like industrial or creepy or gross like all the other movies were. It's less gritty for sure, and it's definitely more of a thriller, but I think it's a different identity that this series needed to take to, stand out from the other movies. So speaking of the traps, they're definitely doing that whole dual plot thing here where you follow the cops for half the movie and then the people in the traps in the other, and you don't know when everything is taking place. That's all the same. But what I liked about the traps is that they all tie together in a sort of video game way, and unlike the later movies in the series, it definitely felt like the characters could have gotten out of them. They don't feel cheap, which I really liked. Another good thing about Jigsaw is its sense of humor. It totally knows it's the 8th film in the series and that you're probably there just to have some fun and watch people try and escape these traps that are gonna eviscerate them. It totally knows that, and it nails that tone perfectly. The pacing is also really good. The movie's only 90 minutes long, and there are seldom any times when there's extended dialogue or unnecessary story being added, and I can tell that they are kind of setting it up for a sequel if it does well, but this one can totally stand on its own and be its own thing, and I think that's good. Something weird I noticed about the other 7 Saw movies is that the Jigsaw killer himself, Tobin Bell, is barely in it, but in this one he's in it a lot. He has some great extended dialogue scenes, and they did a good job bringing his character back to being a character who's not really a murderer. It's kind of that up in the air feeling that you got in the first film that I feel like the movie's lost as time went on. The biggest problem here though is that it really can't do anything new. We've kind of seen everything the Saw franchise has to offer, and the writing is very bad. The acting also isn't great, but it doesn't really need to be in this movie, but the script isn't doing the actors any favors. Halloran is just a really stupid, washed up cop kind of character. He's the bad guy throughout the entire thing. He's done some bad stuff in his past, which is a big theme in the Saw movies. He kind of reminded me of Sebastian Castellanos in The Evil Within 1. You're like, why are you even in this movie this much? It didn't really make sense. Something that would be bad for any other franchise but actually works in Jigsaw's favor is the fact that the plot is pretty predictable. It's easy to follow from the very beginning. I was never really confused, and it kind of took me on a fun ride where I got to turn my brain off for a second and have fun trying to piece together this thriller, which is something that never once happened in the other Saw movies because those plots were totally nuts. I wanted to try something different for this review, so I asked for questions on Twitter, and the first one I got is from Andrew, who wants to know if this is a dark comedy because that's what it looks like to him. So while it has its comedic moments, they're on purpose, don't worry, it's not like so stupid it's funny or anything. It's definitely a horror thriller through and through like every other Saw movie. There is a lot of gore in this. The traps are pretty gruesome, and one I liked in particular involved 2 of the characters being in a grain silo. It's in the trailer. It fills up with grain up to their shoulders, and then you're like, oh, that's not that bad. And then a bunch of weapons and farm equipment starts falling in at random, and you're like, oh, they could actually die from this. I'm sorry I laughed in the first place. The next question is from Justin, who wants to know, as a fan of the series, how this one fits into it. You definitely need to know what happened in the other ones, but you don't need to know the whole intricate plot. There's just a few details that make it into this one. It's kind of a new jumping on point for people, but I would recommend looking up the series online beforehand. I don't know if I'd watch the whole thing, but yeah, I hope that answers your question. A question that I'm going to answer from myself is whether or not this was worth the $22 ticket to see it in IMAX, and the answer is no. There is no benefit to seeing it in IMAX. AMC just wanted to make a lot of money and made the first showing at 7 o'clock IMAX only, so that's why I saw it there. So at the end of the day, Jigsaw isn't really a great movie, but it's definitely not a bad one. If you're a fan of the series who wanted it to come back, there's nothing in here that's really going to disappoint you. It's well directed, it looks great, it's a little poorly written, but the traps are fun and it's pretty gory. It's nice to have a movie out the weekend before Halloween too, even if everyone's just going to be watching Stranger Things and playing Mario. So that's what I thought of Jigsaw. You can let me know what you thought of it down in the comments below, and as always, my name is Jimmy Champagne and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching.